Fairy Mysteries by Eva Kenas. The fourth mystery, the Nomad Giants. One day, Alfdis and Siberius approached Lindy and Max with another mystery that needed to be solved in the Earth realm. They met in Lindy's home forest to discuss it. "Our friends from the realm of giants and trolls have contacted us," said Alfdis. "They heard that we now have 2 detectives who specialize in the Earth realm, and so they have asked us to take on a case that requires immediate attention. It involves a group of giants who have gone missing. Their relatives are worried for them, as they are the only ones of their clan who stayed behind in the Earth realm after an attack by the humans." "I thought that the giants no longer lived in the Earth realm," jumped in Lindy. "Some giants stayed even after humans began to dominate most of the local territories," explained Alfdis. "They became nomads, traveling from place to place and trying to escape from aggressive human tribes." "How could the humans ever pose a threat to the giants?" asked Lindy. "They are much smaller and weaker." Alfdis shrugged. "It's true that the giants are bigger than humans and trolls, but they are much more peaceful and kind-hearted. Humans started to take advantage of that and terrorize them." Siberius elaborated further. "The giants knew they could fight the humans and keep their territories for themselves. But at what cost? Like you and me, they believe in repercussions for wrongful deeds, so they chose not to kill. They preferred to run from the aggressive human tribes who were acting as though they owned everything and everyone. Who knows if the lost nomad giants are still alive?" Siberius turned to Max. "We were hoping that you would check on them with your inner sight, Max." Max nodded, then pointed his crystal horn to the sky, allowed the sunshine to charge it, and concentrated on the incoming visions. "I see a thick wall of blackthorn," he said after a moment. "It seems to me that the nomad giants are behind it, but I can't tell whether they are hiding there voluntarily or whether someone has imprisoned them. They are alive, though." "Well, it looks like you have your first clue. Would you like to take this case, then?" asked Alfdis. Lindy and Max looked at each other and nodded. "Wonderful!" exclaimed Alfdis happily. "But I have to warn you. This time you may be confronted with some disturbing facts about humankind. You'll probably learn about its easily manipulated nature, its cruelty, and desire to dominate. Kian and his parents are exceptionally kind, but not all humans are like them." "Let's not blame it all on the humans, though," objected Max. "Last time it was a troll woman who had all the negative traits you've just listed, Alfdis." "I can see that you've become quite accustomed to the dog form, Max," said Siberius. "Dogs are known to be loyal companions to humans." "Oh yes," agreed Alfdis, "and I understand what you mean, Max. Of course, we should not give up on humankind or trolls, or even goblins. I believe that the good in them always wins. I merely advise you to be strong and keep your light shining at all times. Otherwise, neither the cat giants nor I will be able to help you. Remember what happened last time. Had there not been that one gap in the mist, you would have been lost in darkness. Therefore, it is of utmost importance that you feel empowered before you pursue a new mystery in the Earth realm." Lindy and Max looked at each other. "Why don't we take some time off to recharge? Should we swim in the lake before we go?" asked Lindy, as she knew that the lake had magical, rejuvenating qualities. Max agreed, and so they did just that. Lindy wore her mum's bead dress, which was ideal for swimming, as it could never get wet. It was made of strings of tiny crystal beads that shimmered and glowed in the sunlight and spread all over her when she swam in the clear, light blue water of the limestone lake. Max liked her gown, but was careful not to get tangled up in it. Once they felt energized, Lindy and Max shifted to the Earth realm in their usual disguises of a human girl and a golden white retriever. They decided to visit their friend Kian first to find out whether he or his parents knew anything about the Nomad Giants. On the way to the forest cottage, they heard a loud meowing behind them, and when they turned, they noticed that a pair of black and white cats were following them. Their cries sounded urgent, as if they were asking Lindy and Max to stop and wait for them. Lindy looked at the tiny creatures and realized something. Could it be? Max knew what she meant, so he called out to the approaching cats. "Is that you, Bennu and Chehu?" Each of the cats answered in its own unique way, one with a gentle meow and a mysterious burr burr, and the other one with bree bree. Then the cats ran toward them and started to purr and rub against their legs. "Of course it's us," said Bennu. "We always choose common cat bodies in this realm. We have decided to come with you in case you needed our help like last time," explained Chehu. "You still need a lot of practice when it comes to light shielding." Lindy patted them and admired their disguise. "You are so beautiful and tiny." Her compliment made them both purr even louder, and they chimed in chorus, "Tiny but mighty." And so the group of 4 investigators, 2 from the fairy realm and 2 from Andromeda, set off down the familiar country path lined with hawthorn. As they approached Kian's home, the garden fairies waved at them from the wedgy patches. Though they were usually wary of cats, they weren't afraid of Bennu and Chehu because they recognized the giants in them. "There must be good people living here if they have garden fairies," said Bennu, and he rubbed against the shortest one. Chehu addressed them with a soothing purr and said, "I have many friends among the garden fairies. Why have you chosen to stay here? Wouldn't you prefer to come with us to the fairy realm?" "As long as we can, we will live in this realm because we adore the plants here," answered one of the garden fairies. "But send our greetings to our kin in the fairy realm, where all beings live free from harm." Suddenly they heard a loud galloping noise coming from the forest. The garden fairies began to panic and hid in the kale. Lindy and Max understood why. The dog dragoness Mera was running toward them at incredible speed. Bennu and Chehu froze upon seeing her, and when she rammed into Lindy and caused her to fall, they quickly escaped and joined the garden fairies among the vegetables. Mera jumped at Max next, knocked him down, and began to lick his face. Max wasn't annoyed with her energetic behavior anymore. In fact, he had begun to appreciate it. They took off together, playing wildly in the grass like 2 puppies. Soon after, Kian emerged from the forest and was excited to see that his friends were back. "Lindy, Max, it's been too long." Lindy walked up to him with a smile and said, "Hello, Kian. We have another peculiar case to solve in this realm, and we have come to ask for your help." "Really? You need my help?" "I wouldn't say need," replied Lindy to stop him from boasting. "But we could use some advice. Last time you proved to be quite clever, brave, and, well, a real friend to us. What I'm trying to say is that I trust you and your parents." "That's good to know," grinned Kian. "I suppose it's a big honor to win the trust of a fairy." "Oh, it is," affirmed Lindy seriously, "especially if you are a human." "So what can I help you with?" asked Kian. "Have you heard about the Nomad Giants?" "I have. My parents met them recently." Are your parents at home? Could I talk to them about it? Max and I are not familiar with the Nomad Giants, and before we begin our search, we should like to know whom we're dealing with." Kian nodded and was about to say something when he noticed 2 timid cats peering at him from behind the kale. "What are those cats doing here?" "Oh, these are my friends and mentors from the Detective Academy and Council, Bennu and Chehu." "Detective Academy and Council?" repeated Kian. "Do animals study there as well?" They also teach," said Lindy. "Bennu and Chehu are well-acclaimed professors. They specialize in the mastery of light for the purpose of shielding from darkness and evil." "Do you have any more cat professors at your academy?" asked Kian. "They are not common cats. They are actually cat giants in disguise," she corrected. "In their natural state, they are taller than humans and stand on their hind legs." They take on common cat forms only in this realm. So they are kind of like cat bears, suggested Kian. Kind of, agreed Lindy. But to answer your question, we also have Siberius. He has a lion's face and wears magical glasses that repel any evil in his sight. Kian shook his head in disbelief. Wow, I wish I could see them in their natural state one day. Then he waved at Bennu and Chehu and said, Come on, cat bears, my mum will give you some good food. Brrr, brrr, purred Bennu, and Chehu added a cheerful bree, bree, as they looked around the cottage. I like it here, announced Bennu, and Chehu said, It seems like a good home for cats. He gazed at the countless mice holes around and sighed. Oh, I would have so much fun here if I were their house cat. Control yourself, warned Bennu, when he saw how tempted his twin brother was by the hunting instincts that naturally developed in all the Earth-realm cats, whether native or otherworldly. Remember that we are wise cat giants, and we only hunt out of necessity in the realms where it's required. Exactly. Here it is required, remarked Chehu, and smacked his lips at the sight of a terrified mouse who rushed into a hole by the cottage entrance to hide. Bennu jumped at his brother to stop him, and they fought for a bit. Lindy chuckled at their childish behavior and followed Kian into the main room of the cottage. It was cozy and warm inside. The large stone fireplace contained a nice big stove, and there were various handmade carpets on the rough wooden floor. The furniture was simple, mainly chairs and tables made of clay and tree branches. Max and Mera continued to play outside, but Bennu and Chehu stopped fighting and came in to enjoy some smoked fish that Kian's dad offered them. Lindy watched them in disgust because most of the fairy folk despised the smell of meat. They only ate plants and never understood how beasts and humans could enjoy dead flesh. Would you like some too, Lindy? Asked Kian's dad. Oh no, definitely not, replied Lindy. Kian's dad smiled. I understand, my wife doesn't like it either. He led Lindy to the table where Kian's mum was pouring them all some fresh spring water. Kian tells us you are here to locate some Nomad Giants, she said as soon as Lindy sat down. Yes, they went missing, and their family is worried for them. Do you have any clue where they could be? Kian's mum thought for a moment. I'm not sure. All I know is that the local giants became nomads after a human clan began to push them further north. They could be anywhere now. When someone threatens them, they tend to move rather than fight. Some consider them stupid for that, but the giants are just very peaceful. Kian told me you met some giants recently, said Lindy. Kian's dad corrected her. We met only one. He wore beautiful garments, so he must have been important. We tried to save him after a group of men shot arrows at him and his family. We found him injured in the forest, so we tended to his wounds. Lindy's mum gave a deep sigh when she remembered it. Oh, the poor soul. We tried to save him, but he bled too much. My heart aches when I remember it. Lindy decided to try the spirit-calling method that Alfdis had taught them during the first 2 years at the Detective Academy. She closed her eyes and focused on her inner sight and hearing to establish a connection. To her surprise, the giant manifested in front of her in his light body. He emanated a golden white light and was human-like in appearance, but much taller and sturdier and with more prominent ears and wider nose. After I gave my physical form to the earth, I took on a new form in our home realm, Guvabaran, he told Lindy. Now I need your help, Forest Fairy. Would you please bring our people back home? They are lost, roaming the ancient forest that borders this one on the southern side. Oh, it's so good to hear that they are close by, said Lindy, with her physical eyes still closed, but her inner sight entirely focused on the giant. I promise that we will try to find them and reunite you all. Where is the portal to your realm? In the rocks that hum, he replied, and before he vanished, he added, Thank the human couple for me, and tell them not to worry too much. They did all they could for me. and I do appreciate it." When Lindy opened her eyes, she noticed that Kian and his parents were gaping at her. Then she realized that she hadn't told them that she was about to consult the giant's spirit. "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you what I was doing," she exclaimed. "I connected with the giant whose life you tried to save. He wanted to thank you and tell you that he appreciates all you did for him." Kian's mum began sobbing tears of joy as the message had touched her deeply. "He also told me that his people are lost in the ancient forest that borders this one on the southern side," said Lindy. "We should go there and try to find them." Kian turned to his parents and announced, "I'm going with them." "I'm not sure that's a good idea," objected Kian's dad with a worried look at his son. "You know that one of the Leshy folk guards that ancient forest." "Oh yes, the Leshy folk. Aren't they of the giant species as well?" asked Lindy. Kian's dad nodded. "Yes, they are the giant forest guardians. Their appearance is quite curious, as they are part giant and part fawn with some tree genes. They work for the green man and the green woman, the parents of all vegetation. They are not fond of people, but they do love animals." "That's good news then," said Kian hopefully, "as we will have 4 animal companions with us." Kian's mum gave her son an indulgent look, then addressed her husband. "I think we should let Kian go, darling. Last time he managed quite well." Kian's dad waded up. "All right, but only if Lindy and the animals promise to look after him." Kian's parents both looked at Lindy, who vowed that she would protect him with all her magical powers. "Brr, brr," agreed Bennu, and Chehu added a tentative "bree." Kian's mum squeezed Lindy's hand gratefully, then suddenly remembered something. She asked them to wait and rushed into one of the bed chambers, returning with a crystal bead necklace. "Here, it belonged to the giant whose life we tried to save," she said and handed it to Lindy. Lindy examined the sparkly jewel. "This necklace is made of memory crystal, a rare mineral that can store information. This must be a life story necklace. Each of the beads represents the solar year of someone's life. Since there are only about 100 of them here, the necklace must belong to someone quite young." "You mean quite old," Kian corrected her, and Lindy suddenly realized that she was about to expose who she was to Kian's parents by sharing too much. Kian's mum and dad looked at each other perplexed. "What are you two hiding?" asked Kian's mum suspiciously. Lindy turned to Kian, lost for words. "It's up to you if you say anything, Lindy, but they will keep your secret." Lindy trusted Kian, so she locked eyes with Kian's mum, then with Kian's dad. "Is it true? Do you promise to keep whatever I tell you to yourselves?" "We swear," they said in one voice and truly meant it. "Okay then. I'm one of the forest fairies, and I come from the fairy realm that separated from this one a long time ago. We still visit your world, mainly to help solve what you humans called supernatural mysteries." "I knew you were from another world," exclaimed Kian's mum with an enthusiastic smile. "I met a few forest fairies when I was younger." Kian's mum gave Lindy a firm hug and assured her that they would never break her trust. She knew well enough that you should never lie to the fairies, as it brings bad luck. And so the group of 6 heroes, Lindy, Max, Kian, Mera, Bennu and Chehu, set off to the ancient forest to find the lost tribe of Nomad Giants. While Mera and Max sniffed the air for any trace of the giants, Bennu and Chehu walked behind them, scouting out the area for possible danger. Lindy kept her eyes on the forest path, and Kian was pensive, thinking about the fairy realm. "Do the beings in your realm ever die?" he asked Lindy. "No, we don't experience death as you do, because we can rejuvenate ourselves or change form as we like. We have light bodies, which are superior to the physical types of bodies we inhabit here. You could say that our light bodies were a temporary shell in this realm. You have a light body as well, of course, but humans tend to forget about it, just as they don't remember having a spirit that operates both the light body and the physical one. So you are only made of light in your realm? Asked Kian. Only, repeated Lindy with a chuckle. Operating the light body feels much more natural than operating this one. Kian widened his gaze. Really? How so? The physical body feels strangely heavy and fragile, explained Lindy. It's susceptible to destruction, pain, or illness. The light body feels no pain, never falls ill, and cannot be harmed. And we really have these light bodies as well? Yes, all beings do, confirmed Lindy. Unfortunately, some of you remember it only when your physical body dies. I was told that was why human lives are so intense, because they don't remember their true eternal selves. Kian thought about this. Do you know what happens when we die? Lindy shrugged. I'm not sure, but from what I have learned, humans often return to this realm to experience another life, or they travel to their home realms, depending on where their spirit came from originally. Some may have even come from the fairy realm. I have heard of those who decided to experience a whole lifetime in this realm and have subsequently forgotten about their true origins. The world tree has countless realms, and the portals that connect them are all across the sky, under the water, and in the earth. For example, Bennu and Chehu came from one of the celestial realms in Andromeda, and although they like to live in our realm now, it takes them just a split second to travel back home. Kian was about to inquire further, but Mera interrupted them with a loud bark. I sense danger, she announced. Bennu and Chehu heard her and began to create their powerful light shields. What are they doing? Asked Kian. When Bennu and Chehu make themselves glow like that, it means they are creating light shields to repel evil. They are masters at light shielding, explained Lindy. While the light emanating from Bennu and Chehu intensified, Max directed his crystal horn to the sky, charged it with sunlight, and waited to receive a vision. I see 2 goblins with fiery red eyes, he said. They are following us. It seems they don't like it that we are investigating mysteries here. Lindy stamped her magical linden staff on the ground and proclaimed, We don't have to worry about the goblins. Our light and magic are stronger than theirs could ever be. Lindy bravely led the way, and Kian followed her with the same determination. Meanwhile, the 2 goblins hid behind a tall tree and watched the group walk toward the ancient forest. They exude too much light now, complained the taller goblin. Don't worry, said the shorter goblin. The local Leshy will take care of them for us. You are right, smirked the taller one and clapped his dirty hands. Lindy and her friends exited the southern side of the forest where Kian and his parents lived and passed through a clearing on the way to the ancient forest. As soon as they were among the tall trees on the other side, they sensed a powerful presence nearby. They suspected who it was, so they listened carefully to the sounds of the forest. Then a roar pierced the quiet air. That's what the Leshy folk sounded like when they were trying to scare off intruders. And if their terrifying roar didn't quite do the trick, they went on to hunt their enemies and beat them to death with their giant tree staffs. Like some other fairy folk, they especially despised humans and goblins for their greed and selfishness. Lindy and Max had never met a Leshy before, but Alfdis used to tell them some scary stories about them, and she didn't tend to exaggerate. They expected the worst. Lindy gathered her friends together, and they hid in the nearest thicket. They pressed their terrified bodies closer together as they heard heavy steps approaching. After a few tense moments, a giant humanoid emerged from behind the tall trees. It indeed was one of the Leshy folk, a bearded giant with fawn-like horns, skin as rough as tree bark, and hair that resembled tree roots. His hands and feet were half human, half branch, and he had bright green eyes. The Leshy sniffed the air. What stinks? What stinks? Is it a goblin? Is it a human? He walked cautiously around while the group of detectives trembled in the thicket. Show yourself, he demanded. He neared the 6 friends, and with each of his heavy steps the ground shook a little. Then finally he stopped right by Lindy's feet and roared. I know you are hiding in this thicket. Come out and explain yourself, or I'll pin you to the ground with my staff. Max and Lindy looked at Bennu and Chehu. They all nodded in silent agreement. Together they stepped out of the thicket and began to emanate a strong light shield of protection. The Leshy covered his eyes. Oh, what is this? Lindy and Max were not as good at casting light shields, but Bennu and Chehu were masters who shone like 2 mighty stars. The Leshy focused on the beings behind the brightness and finally saw who they were. What are the 2 cat giants doing here in disguise as common earthly cats? He asked. Since the Leshy could communicate with animals like all the other fairy folk, he could hear the cat's reply. We are here to protect our friends from all harm, exclaimed Chehu, and Bennu added. They are not as experienced at casting such great light shields as us, but we can assure you that they have an exceptional light source. The Leshy grunted. Well, I don't want to make enemies among the cat giants. I know your kind is esteemed for its wisdom and benevolence. I guess I won't hurt your friends then. At least not yet. I will give them a chance to explain themselves first. The Leshy crossed his arms and waited. Bennu and Chehu kept their halos of light in alert mode, just in case, and nodded to their friends. Lindy gestured at Kian to stay put, and he obeyed because he knew it would be better to have her talk to the Leshy first. Hello, Mr. Leshy, said Lindy. Forgive us for being so rude by hiding from you, but we were intimidated by your estimable presence. Please let me introduce myself and my company. I'm a fairy in disguise as a human girl, and these are my friends, Unicorn in disguise as a dog, and 2 cat giants in disguise as common cats. We come in peace from the fairy realm. The Detective Council sent us here to solve a mystery. We are new to this profession, but we have successfully solved 3 cases already. The Leshy observed Lindy with a suspicious frown and asked, How come I smell a human? Lindy turned to Kian and whispered, Come out now, Kian. Don't worry, we won't let him hurt you. Kian nodded and bravely stepped out of hiding along with Mera, who growled at the Leshy, warning him not to even dare touch her favorite person in the world. Ha! There's the human, the Leshy yelled. No matter how young, you are still an enemy to this forest. I want you gone. This boy is our friend, said Lindy firmly. He is a human, but one of the good ones, and beside him is a dragoness in disguise as a dog. One of the good ones, mocked the Leshy. I've heard that one before. Do you know how many ancient forests the humans have destroyed and how many Leshy they have killed? I'm one of the last few in this realm. Your kind has no respect for anyone or anything, not even for the trees which keep you alive. You just know how to take without giving anything back, and then you beg me to spare your lives when I stand up for my home. I learned long ago not to trust any human. Hey, my family and I have never intentionally hurt anyone, protested Kian. We even built our home around an ancient oak to honor its spirit, and we respect every part of its bark, branches, and roots. He's our friend and guardian. The Leshy towered over Kian to intimidate him some more. Still, Kian kept his ground and continued speaking. And also my parents have told me stories about our origins. and many of them tell of humanity descending from trees." That information surprised the Leshy, but he stammered. "Oh, well, you are far from who you used to be. Contemporary humans are nothing like the ancients." He then turned to Lindy. "You look very human to me as well. How can I be sure that you are not lying about being a fairy in disguise?" Lindy lifted her magical linden staff and whirled it around her head, summoning the air elementals. A strong gust of wind began to sweep through the trees, making the branches sway and the leaves rustle. At first the Leshy observed the wind quietly, but before the elementals went too wild, he stopped them with one swing of his own tree staff. "I accept no fairy magic in my forest," he warned. "Only my magic is allowed here." Lindy rested her staff and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mr. Leshy. I respect your guardianship of this ancient forest, and I want you to know that I consider all woodlands my home and family as well. See, I'm actually a forest fairy. My mother is a tree elf and my father a faun." "The fauns," mused the Leshy. "I remember the time when they roamed this forest. Cheery folk, but too consumed with their basic instincts." "There are countless types of fairy folk in our realm," said Lindy. "Only the toughest stayed in this one." "Toughest indeed," the Leshy agreed with a proud expression. "I have never run away from a fight, and I never will." "And we respect you for it," said Lindy. "We wouldn't have come here if it weren't for a good cause. We are in search of the Nomad Giants who went missing after a group of men attacked them. Their kin is worried about them and needs us to take them to the realm of giants and trolls, where they can live in peace." Yet another realm that had to be established for the ancient beings of these lands, and just because of arrogant humans and vile goblins, said the Leshy bitterly. "Tell me, Forest Fairy, why did we allow this to happen? Why did we become refugees from our own home realm?" "Please let bygones be bygones, Mr. Leshy," begged Lindy. "I don't know about the goblins, but I do believe in the human heart." "Ah, you beings from the fairy realm are so naive. You escaped, yet you keep sending your Salvation Army here, hoping to recruit the rest of the fairy folk as well. I have had a few like you here already, trying to lure me into your realm. Ha! I told them something I still stand by. We need to preserve this realm, not run away and allow it to be ruled by humans, goblins, and vermin." Lindy sighed. "I understand, and I have a deep reverence for you and the other fairy folk who have decided to stay here and protect their territory against the dominion of cruel minds. It's a courageous mission. We have nothing to criticize and no one to persuade. We only interfere when someone asks for our help." The Leshy murmured something to himself and carefully looked at all the beings that stood beside Lindy. He tried to see through their facades. The dog unicorn looked innocent, the cat pure, the dog dragoness feisty, and the human boy as stubborn as the Leshy himself. They all had a large dose of goodwill and courage, which made the Leshy soften a bit. Though he was a fierce forest guardian, he was also wise, and after years of practice he could recognize truthfulness from deceit and a pure heart from a wicked one. He finally made up his mind. "All right then. Since you have the cat giants with you and you seem harmless, I will take you to the Nomad Giants." "You know where they are?" asked Lindy. The Leshy nodded. "I hid them in my forest grotto, behind the wall of blackthorn, that no one dares to climb." "Oh, that's why Max kept seeing the blackthorn in his inner sight," exclaimed Lindy and looked at Max, but he just nudged her nervously to turn back to the Leshy as he hadn't finished speaking. The Leshy gave her an offended look and continued. "I will help you, Forest Fairy, under one condition. You will promise to help me in return if I ever need it." Lindy checked with her friends to see what they thought of that. "Well, if my mentors agree to it, I don't care what anyone else thinks. I need to have your word, Forest Fairy. insisted the Leshy. "I need to know for certain that you will be there for me, no matter what." He extended his bark-covered hand to Lindy to shake on it. Lindy looked into his green eyes and swore. "Okay then, you have my word, Mr. Leshy." "I promise to help you as well if you ever need me," proclaimed Max, rising on his hind legs and letting out his unicorn neigh. Mera gave her dog yawn that meant she agreed too, and finally Chehu called out, "Bree, I will help too," and Bennu added, "Brr, me too." Even Kian swore to help, but that only made the Leshy sneer. "I'm wiser than to trust idle human promises," he said. "I am more likely to be the one helping you again." Lindy gave Kian a comforting smile, as he was upset that he was considered such a villain in the ancient forest. The Leshy set off and beckoned to Lindy and her friends to come along. The two wicked goblins, who were still spying on the group from a distance, were livid when they saw that the Leshy hadn't harmed them, but had actually become their ally. "How is this possible? First they defeat the water goblin, then the troll witch, and now they have befriended the Leshy," fumed the taller goblin. "The Leshy will pay for this," swore the shorter goblin. "I suppose it's time to renew our pact with the loggers who are cutting down the forest." "And with the huntsmen," added the taller goblin, and so the two began to cook up another wicked plan to stop Lindy and Max from solving cases in the Earth Realm. Lindy and her friends followed the Leshy into his hidden forest grotto, carpeted in moss and surrounded by a thick wall of blackthorn. The Nomad Giants were sitting around a fire. At first they didn't even realize they had company and were busy roasting gigantic mushrooms. Lindy knew that this was the main diet of giants, trolls, and Leshy folk. However, you could only eat the mushrooms if the forest gnomes allowed it, as they often built dwellings in the mycelium or in the mushrooms themselves. If the gigantic mushrooms were glowing at night, it was a sign that the gnomes were occupying them and they were not to be picked or tampered with in any way. The Leshy cleared his throat. The Nomad Giants were startled when they saw him approaching with a group of strangers. "Don't be afraid, dear friends," said the Leshy. "I bring you the detectives from the fairy realm. Believe it or not, they came to find you and lead you to safety." Kian stayed behind while Lindy stepped closer to the group of 11 giants. "Hello," she greeted them timidly. "Could I ask which one of you is the leader?" "We lost our leader during a sudden attack by humans," said one of the giants, shifting his eyes to Kian. Kian kept his gaze down, as he was ashamed after all the things he had heard about humanity that day. Lindy took out the life story necklace and showed it to the giants. "My friend Kian here is the son of a couple who tried to save one of you. This necklace belonged to him." The giants gazed in awe at the sparkling jewel. They began talking among themselves, and Lindy could sense enthusiasm as well as bewilderment in the hum of dialogue. Some of the giants wondered if she had stolen it, while others thought it could be a trap. Lindy decided to use her spirit calling method and contacted the spirit of the necklace's owner. In her mind, she asked him for advice on how to make his people trust her. The giant's light body soon appeared to her and said, "I am their leader, Lindy. To make them believe you, call out our greeting. Hurrah ho!" Lindy nodded and called out, "Hurrah ho!" The giants fell silent and looked at Lindy in surprise. "That is your greeting, right?" "How do you know?" asked one of them. "The giant who owned this life story necklace told me. I'm in contact with his spirit. He just said that he was your leader." The giants began to quietly discuss something, still distrustful of Lindy and her friends. "I also had trouble believing them," admitted the Leshy with a wary glance at Kian. "That's why I brought them here for you to decide." "It's hard to make a decision without our leader," said one of the giants, upon which Lindy quickly retorted, "That's why his spirit communicates through me. He's here with us, but you can't see him." "How come you can?" asked one of the female giants. I'm using a spirit-calling method I learned at the Detective Academy, explained Lindy. Let me show you. I will now allow him to speak through me. Lindy concentrated with her eyes closed and let their leader speak to them in her voice. Hurrah-ho! Hear your leader speak. When I foresee the future of this realm, I see no giants in it. Therefore, I encourage you to let the forest fairy take you home to the realm where your kin awaits. Your home, Guvabaran. The giants looked at each other with excited smiles. No one but us knows the original name of our home realm, called out one of them. Our leader's spirit has come forth to help us, announced another one, and then they all cheered together. Hurrah-ho! Hurrah-ho! The giants rejoiced that their tribe finally had a purpose, and they began to thank Lindy, offering her and the others some of the giant honey-glazed mushrooms they were roasting. Lindy accepted a seat beside one of the female giants and beckoned to Kian to join her. The animals soon began to feel at home there. Max and Mera enjoyed the mushrooms, and Bennu and Chehu found a quiet spot in the tree branches where they had a good view of the Leshy's grotto. Later, they all fell asleep on a big bed of moss that the Leshy offered them, and in the morning they prepared for the journey to the portal to Guvabaran. Lindy and Kian were amazed by the massive wooden constructions that the Nomad Giants built for themselves in the forest. Life on the road made them inventive, and they had created marvelous tent-like structures from tree branches, in particular the flexible ones of willow and hazel. One of the structures even had 2 floors so that the children could easily sleep in it while the grown-ups were carrying them. Lindy was very impressed with how the Nomad Giants lived and asked them many questions about their culture while she was helping them pack up. There was a lot to carry, so Kian joined the younger giants in carrying one of the tents, and Lindy grabbed some branch bundles, which the giants always had at hand in case one of the structures needed mending. When it was finally time to say goodbye to the Leshy, the Nomad Giants began to feel unsure, as he had made them feel very secure and comfortable. "Where is the portal you're taking them to?" asked the Leshy, who was still protective of his friends and wanted to make sure they would make it back home safely. Lindy told him that the leader said it was located in the rocks that hum. "I know where that is," said the Leshy. "Why don't I take you there?" The giants were relieved to hear that the Leshy was coming along and began to feel calmer. The Leshy took the biggest of the Nomad Giants' constructions and led the way. Soon they reached a narrow path that led to the rocks that hum. As they all stood at the foot of the path, readying themselves for the steep ascent, they couldn't help but marvel at the sharp, dark grey boulders scattered all around. Lindy noticed a long crack in one of the recesses and wondered aloud if it was the entrance to Guvabaran. The Leshy confirmed her suspicion, and as they neared the crack, they began to hear a gentle yet intense humming sound. It enveloped the rocks, summoning the Nomad Giants to their homeland. The giants interpreted the sound as a choir of voices and believed them to be their ancestors. Some of them began to weep while others laughed, but they were all equally touched by it. Soon after, the crack in the rocks widened and became a portal of light. "Hurrah-ho!" the Nomad Giants called out and waved a happy goodbye to the Leshy, Lindy and her companions. One by one they walked through the portal, carrying their possessions and children. Once they had all safely passed the threshold, the portal closed behind them and became just a crack in the rocks again. The Leshy, Lindy, and her friends listened as the hum slowly faded. Lindy noticed the Leshy wiping a tear from his eye that he tried to hide from them. "I hope you will keep your word, Forest Fairy," he said with a hint of warning in his voice. "I will," avowed Lindy. Then she reached into her shoulder bag and tucked out one of the magic whistles that she had once given to Kian. She handed it to the Leshy and said, "Here, we will be just a whistle away." The Leshy accepted it, nodded his thanks, and then pointed at the path ahead. "Follow that stream. It will take you back to the clearing that separates this ancient forest from the neighboring one, where the boy's parents lived." Kian noticed that the Lash's attitude toward him had become a tad warmer. He even looked at him without frowning that time. "Thank you, Mr. Leshy," said Lindy cordially. "Thank you for everything." The Leshy grumbled a "you are welcome" into his beard and set off back to his secret grotto. Lindy smiled after him, because she could tell that, even though it may have not looked that way, she had made a powerful ally that day. To show the Leshy their goodwill, Lindy and Kian waved. Max let out a goodbye neigh, Mera yawned, Bennu let out his brr, and Chehu a cute bree